artifact is poetry. Um, I will start with a segment of Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter twisted lies, but just like the moon and like sun, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Poetry has been an important part of me since 7th grade when I realized I could write poetry, and I got 3 of my poems published in this Poetic Powers book. I love poetry from each era and every poet. I can relate to this poem because Maya Angelou has gone through a lot in her life, and even though that people told her she couldn't do it, she still writes from what they told her she couldn't do, and that's how I get to relate to her. You will learn in my speech. You will learn about poetry and why Maya inspired me, and you will learn where I come as a person. First, I'll talk about the history of poetry and Maya Angelou. Then I'll discuss why I identify with poetry. Poetry comes from a Greek origin. It means to make or create. It also is a type of art, a language art. Poetry began in ancient history, BC, when researchers believe that it started from the times of caveman to early agricultural societies. They believe that they will recite poems to the harvest and tell stories about that will later turn into legends. Poetry has been in every era, from Greeks to Romans to medieval times to present day now, modern days. Throughout history, poetry has been a sign of hope for many people, so they get to express themselves whenever they're going through something hard. In our history also, we had movement, and poetry got to be part of that. For an example, the Romantic period, or Romanticism, it is one of the greatest and most illustrious movements in literary history. It consists of only 7 poets and lasted about 25 years. And it started with William Blake to Lord Byron's death. I will talk about Maya Angelou and her history. She was born on April 4th and is still alive. Maya Angelou is one of the first non-fiction bestseller for being an African American in 1971. Maya Angelou has been through a lot. She not only faced bad racial discrimination, but in her earlier years, she dropped out of high school. Then she ended up pregnant, but then she felt something to go back to high school. So she went back to high school and started working for her son. She had to work a lot of jobs, and a few of them are she had to be a waitress and a cook. And then she had the chance to go back to study dance. And when she was on Broadway, she wrote her first, not poet, but like a story, the Cabaret of Freedom. And that's how her writing career began. The poem Still I Rise talks about African American and how they were oppressed and how they got to rise from that. It's a sign of hope for everyone that goes through oppression and hard times. I just have talked about the history of poetry and Maya's history. Now I will talk about why it identifies me. In the 7th grade, poetry became a big part of my life. I didn't know I was good at it, so I was good at writing at words or expressing myself. It helped me through a lot because of the year that my uncle passed away. I didn't know how to express myself or didn't know how to let my feelings out. When I started writing poetry, I started writing about him. Poetry helped me realize that you can recover, and it gives you a chance to recover and helps you heal. Since I wrote a few poems, They have been published in the Poetic Powerfoot, and it was a great accomplishment for me because I felt like one of the famous poets. The reason why I look up to Maya Angelou is because she's been through a lot and was very successful at the end, and still is very successful. She inspired me because of all odds she got to follow her dreams. Maya's poem, Still I Rise, shows me even though people look down on me or judge me, I will rise and be successful no matter what. I think that's why she loved poetry, because she can prove her point in simple words, but it meant so much more and were very powerful. And that's why Maya inspired me, and that's how I can relate to her. I talked about, in my speech, I talked about the history of poetry, Maya Angelou, and why this culture represents me because it's one of my greatest passions. I know before 7th grade I wasn't a poet, but I gave it a try. And it came fluently to me, so everyone makes poems even though you guys don't know it. Poems come from the heart, and it's your feelings that you can express.